Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 12th of May of 2026. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where we see that both the Russians and the Americans are increasing their pressure on the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. The Russians published a very interesting update video this day, and the president of the Russian Federation made lots of very interesting statements. Russia successfully tested the Sarmat missile system. Work on the Poseidon and Burevestnik systems is in the final stages, according to Putin. The president mentioned the possibility of arming the Oreshnik with nuclear warheads. Russia was forced to consider ensuring its strategic security after the US withdrawal from the New START agreement. The Sarmat's operational range could exceed 35,000 kilometers. A successful Sarmat launch will allow the 1st Regiment to be deployed by the end of the year, according to Strategic Missile Forces Commander Kharkiv. This is the most powerful weapon in the world right now. And as you can see, the Russians published this update after the end of the May holidays and after the end of the May ceasefire, and a day before President Trump arrives in China. So this is a very strong and a very important message made by Russians. As for Ukraine itself, we see that Zelensky is dragging into another political and corruption scandal. First of all, as we discussed during the previous video, Tucker Carlson published a very interesting interview with Yulia Mendel, and she said a lot of very interesting things about Zelensky, about 2022, and of course about drug addiction. She said that Zelensky was ready to withdraw troops from Donbas in 2022, but later for some reason he changed his mind. Another important thing is that former second most powerful person in Ukraine is currently being attacked by the anti-corruption agencies in Ukraine. We have already discussed the situation. This is Andrei Yermak, and the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine is conducting legal proceedings that may be related to Andrei Yermak, former head of Zelensky's office, Ukraine media reports. And later we received the report that he was arrested, and according to information we have, Zelensky's former chief of staff charged in major corruption probe. Andrei Yermak has been charged with money laundering tied to the construction of a luxury residential compound outside Kiev. Zelensky has made any statements, but later we received the report that Zelensky is not a defendant in the corruption case. Investigations into the energy and defense industries are ongoing, says NABU head. Of course, he is not a defendant because now this agency is trying to collect as many as possible people who can witness against him in the future. As of now, they have several peoples, and the most important thing that the previous people managed to escape the territory of Ukraine. Some of them hide on the territory of Israel, some of them hide somewhere else, but now we see that NABU managed to capture and to arrest the former Zelensky's head of the office, and most likely he will not be able to escape, which means that he may say lots of very interesting things to these investigators. Another important thing that Ukraine's anti-corruption prosecutor's office is requesting the arrest of Yermak with the possibility of bail set at 180 million hryvnias, which is probably several million of dollars, something like this. So this is the situation, and we see that the Russians press Ukraine with missiles, with massive attacks. For example, during the previous nights, the Russians once again attacked the territory of Ukraine using at least 216 drones. This evening, the Russians published a video with the Sarmat missile system, which makes the Russia is completely undefeatable. Obviously, the Ukrainians will not be able to deal strategic defeat to the Russian Federation if they have such a weapon. From the other side, we see that the United States of America increases its pressure on Ukraine using their own methods, and today we received a very interesting message from the Ukrainian side, and probably this is something like an answer from the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. This morning, more precisely somewhere at 12 p.m., maybe at 1 p.m., after the Russian massive missile strike ended, and after we start receiving first updates about Mendel and about Yermak, we received the report that the Ukrainian authorities announced the evacuation of the districts of Nikopol. Mandatory evacuation announced in one of the districts of Nikopol, Dnipropetrovsk regional military administration. Families with children must be evacuated from several settlements, and more than 1,100 people from some streets of Nikopol and Marganets. The evacuation is planned to be carried out within a month. So according to these reports, the local authorities of the Dnipropetrovsk region announced the evacuation of this territory. So this is a very important territory of Ukraine. It's not just a number of villages somewhere in the Dnipropetrovsk region. As you can see, there is no line of combat contact in this area. The clashes are taking place further to the east around the settlement of Stepnogorsk. So why the Ukrainians decided to announce an evacuation from this area? And the thing is that this territory that the Ukrainians are planning to evacuate is located just several kilometers in front of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So if we calculate the distance, let's say the distance between the city of Nikopol and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is less than 13 kilometers. And if we calculate the distance between the settlement of Marganets, its southern part, and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the distance is around 10 kilometers, which is nothing telling the truth when talking about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians are able to cross these territories just within probably several minutes. And currently the situation, as you can see, our map has been updated. Now we see more or less fresh satellite pictures from this area. We see that there is no more Kakhovska water reservoir. There is just a tiny Dnieper river. This is it. And of course lots of islands and different water barriers or something like this. But obviously this is not already the Kakhovska water reservoir. It's just the river that the Ukrainians are able to cross if they decide so, and they can attack the Zaporizhzhia power station anytime soon. And most likely this is something like a message that was sent by Zelensky to the Americans and to the Russians, and the message sounds as following: if you don't stop doing this, if you don't stop pushing and pressing the president of Ukraine Zelensky with these corruption scandals and so on, then Ukraine will begin their major offensive operation in the direction of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and then let happens what happens. So this is probably the logic of the president of Ukraine. And furthermore, don't forget that according to different sources, these days, more precisely since the beginning of May of 2026, the Ukrainians have managed to improve their position significantly in the western Zaporizhzhia direction, in the area of the responsibilities of the group of forces Dnieper. And these are the changes, for example, these are the changes on the ground since the 30th of April of 2026. And as you can see, the Ukrainians have managed to improve their position significantly. Some of these changes were confirmed by different geolocations and videos. Some of them haven't been confirmed. We have just different opinions of different experts and mappers. But anyway, the progress is significant if this information is correct, if this information is true. So which means that most likely the Ukrainians can continue their offensive operation. They may test the Russians' defenses in this area, especially in the direction of the settlement of Vasylivka. And the Ukrainians, if they see that they are able to continue pushing, and if they are able to force the Russians to fall back from these territories, then why not, for example, for the Ukrainian side, to try to attack the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station and the city of Energodar. And this is probably another reason why the president of the Russian Federation today was talking about both the Sarmat system and about the Oreshnik system that can use and that can carry the nuclear warheads. So everything is possible, and if Russia see additional escalation around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, everything is possible, and the Russians may use everything they want. At the same time, we received a very interesting video from the area to the northwest of the city of Nikopol, this one. We have already discussed this situation during the previous video, but it's better to discuss this situation once again. During the previous night, the Russians carried out a massive missile attack and drone attack through the territory of Ukraine. More than 200 drones the Russians used for these purposes, and this morning pro-Russian sources published this video. And in this video we can see a substation that was attacked and almost probably damaged, maybe almost destroyed by the Russians as a result of massive attack with drones. So, and if you remember, I pointed your attention that we don't have this substation on the map, so we have fields in this area. So this attack was geolocated, and this is exactly the area that was attacked by Russians. So as of this map, we see field. What does it mean? This means that this is a very fresh substation that most likely was built by the Ukrainians probably during the previous year, within the previous year. So up to maybe somewhere in 2025, maybe in 2026, maybe this substation was built just several months ago. So, but the timings are not very important. The most important thing is why the Ukrainians decided to build this substation. And as you can see, this is a very powerful substation, and probably this is 750 substation, which most likely can connect a nuclear power station with the rest of the territory, with the rest network of energy network of Ukraine. So what does it mean? Basically, the Ukrainians probably before the beginning of the summer of 2026 managed to finish the construction of energy infrastructure in this area that can allow the Ukrainians to, let's say, connect the nuclear power station with the energy infrastructure of the rest of Ukraine. So which means that the Ukrainians, in case if the Ukrainians were able to, let's say, take under complete control the city of Energodar with the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, basically the Ukrainians had everything they need to establish connection between the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station and the rest of Ukraine. So let's say to connect a nuclear power station with Ukraine and to disconnect this power station from the territory of the Russian Federation. So this is a very interesting point, and we see that the Russians attacked this substation, and the Russians seems like sent a message that we see everything, we understand everything, and we won't allow you to do this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to happen next. But once again, the corruption scandal in Kiev and all these things with Andriy Yermak, with Zelensky, with different things, will force Zelensky sooner or later, and probably even sooner than later, to start acting, because currently we can see a very powerful media voice and video loud against Zelensky. He needs to break the situation. He needs to break the situation if he wants to stabilize the situation. And the only way how Zelensky can break this media attack against him is to make something louder. So to begin another biggest offensive operation on the ground, let's say like the Suja offensive operation with the taken territories of Russia under control, and or to establish complete control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, that will also allow Zelensky to break this media attack against him. Of course, let's wait and see what is going to happen next, but we will keep an eye on this area because something strange is happening here. Now let's move further and let's talk about the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction, where both the Russians and the Ukrainians continue attacking each other. During the previous 24 hours, as you can see, we received lots of videos from the settlement of Vasylivka. In this video, we can see how the Russians were bombing the settlement with aviation, trying to reduce the Ukrainian resistance in this area. In this video, we can see how the Russians using FPV drones were attacking vehicles, positions and infantry of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the settlement. So I'm just trying to tell you that these days we start receiving lots of updates from the settlement of Vasylivka, and telling the truth, it seems that in coming days the group of forces east will announce complete control over the territory and the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further. But at the same time, during the previous day we received lots of videos of how the Ukrainians were trying to enter the settlement of Rizdvyanka, at least from two directions, from the southern direction and from the southwest southwestern direction using vehicles. As of now, we don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians managed to do this or not, but we have videos how Russians were FPV-droning vehicles that were answering the settlement from different directions. The Russians are saying that these videos were made and were published by pro-Russian sources, and these attacks were carried out by Russians during ceasefire. So the Russians are saying that during the ceasefire, the Ukrainians made several attempts to answer the settlement of Rizdvanka, but as we can see according to these videos, these attacks were repelled by Russians. Anyway, based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Now let's wait and see what's next, what we are going to receive next from this area. Furthermore, several sources stated that both the Russians and the Ukrainians are intensifying their actions in the northern Zaporizhzhia direction. Most likely, in coming days, we'll start receiving first changes. Now let's talk about the city of Konstantinovka. We will adjust the map before the next video. Right before we started making this evening update, pro-Ukrainian sources published a video of how the Ukrainians were attacking Russians through the settlement of Malacharka using FPV drones. So based on this video, we'll adjust the map. I will just try to clarify how exactly to do this. As for the city itself, during the previous day, the Russians continued bombing and attacking the settlement, mainly the southwestern and the western parts of the city. The situation, as you can see, in the city of Konstantinovka is critical. The Russians are pushing from many positions, from everywhere, and it seems that Ukrainians are about to lose control over the southwestern and the western parts of the city. As for the Slaviansk-Kramatorsk direction, during the previous 12 hours after the ceasefire ended, the Russians improved their positions. We have reported about additional changes on the ground along Severodonetsk Donbas canal. We've made these changes based on the report that was published by a neutral mapper and based on a video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. And here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians right exactly through these tree lines. Based on these videos and updates, we adjusted the map, and we have a video of how Russians were securing tree lines to the south of the settlement of Alexandrovka. And in this video we can see a Russian soldier that dropped a mine on inside of this stronghold, and then there was a very heavy explosion. And we have a change on the ground where the Russians improved their positions through the eastern part of the forest. It seems that the Russians are intensifying their offensive operation, and it seems that the Ukrainians most likely will not be able to hold their positions in this area for a very long period of time. As for the area between the city of Liman and further in the northern direction towards the city of Kupiansk, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. But a bit further from the northeastern direction of the Kharkiv region we received lots of updates. The Russians right now are focused to maintain lines around the settlement of Bilodis. The Russians began moving in the direction of the settlement from the Volchansk direction through the many tree lines and fields. At the same time, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the territory along the border between the most northeastern part and the settlement of Varvarovka and Akhrimovka. So as of now, these are just preparations before something bigger, before the major Russian offensive. But this major Kharkiv Russian offensive operation most likely won't start before June of 2026. As of now, the Russians are trying to prepare themselves. So we've covered most of the updates regarding the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. Most likely these days we'll receive more updates on the matter of additional pressure on the President of Ukraine Zelensky, and most likely in coming days the Russians will carry out a massive missile and drone attack through the entire territory of Ukraine. And at the same time we received a very important update from the Republic of Belarus. Today the President of the Republic of Belarus, Lukashenko, stated that Belarus is preparing for a war or for defense. The authorities will selectively mobilize units and prepare them for possible combat operations, which means that the Republic of Belarus either is trying to increase pressure on the President of Ukraine Zelensky and on the northern border between Ukraine and the Republic of Belarus, trying to force the Ukrainians to always keep some forces in this area, or indeed the Republic of Belarus is preparing itself before the beginning of a major offensive operation in the direction of the western parts of Ukraine. So everything is possible. Let's wait and see what is going to happen next. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds us we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.